In the silence within, you will find relief, truth, and the instructions you've been seeking. Go there and listen. It's one of my favorite quotes from Pritchard, one of my favorite motivational speakers and authors. And that's really the core of today's topic. How do you find that silence? How do you find the pause in the busyness of everyday life so you can go within? So I was talking to a client of mine over the weekend, and she said, I just feel like I'm so busy, and I don't even know how I got this busy, and I don't even know what I want anymore. And I think that's what Pritchard was talking about. When we find the pause, when we go within, that's when those answers, the things that we've been seeking, actually finally can bubble up when we pay attention to the pause. So I was talking to my best friend about this over the weekend, and she was like, my mind just chatter. And we were talking about, how do you even begin to do this? How do you begin to pause? So I, over the past several years on my own healing journey, have come up with 5 different types of pauses that I consider integral to my success, my productivity, my sanity, my state of mind, my emotion, my energy level, whatever. They really have become core practices for me. And I want to share them with you. And I'm going to be honest, some of them have become really easy for me to do over the course of several years. And some of them I still struggle with. So in all honesty. So I'm going to go kind of in order with how I started these pause practices, what I do with them, what they provide for me, and then the benefits that you might expect. So pause practice number 1, vacation. So this is one that most of us are probably familiar, at least with the concept. Now, we may not be good at allowing ourselves time off. So that was me really up until a couple of years ago. I rarely took time off. I rarely took a vacation. I always felt like, who's going to do my job when I'm not here, right? I didn't want to let anybody down. So giving myself permission to unplug and actually take a vacation was huge. And that is something that my partner and I have committed to each other, that we are going to do this for ourselves. We're going to do this for our relationship. We're going to do this because we know we're better people when we give ourselves permission to take a long weekend, to take a week or even 2 weeks. We just got back from Ecuador and Peru. Off, unplugged, not working, disconnected because we don't even have cell phone service. That is so restorative and rejuvenative. And I find with my clients that vacation, staycation, whatever, especially getting away, because if you're anything like me, if you're doing a staycation, it's too easy to get distracted by reality, right? So for me, I'm still at a point in my life where vacations are most effective for me if I'm away from home. I have to actually go somewhere. You may be in that point, you may not be. So that's pause number 1. It's really literally taking a break from your normal everyday life for several days, at least 3. You do a long weekend, a holiday weekend, whatever, maybe a week off, maybe 2 weeks off if you can finagle it, to unplug, to get away from all of your normal work, life responsibilities. So that's pause type number 1. And that's something that I'm becoming a lot more fluent at doing, and I'm reaping the benefits because I feel so much more driven and focused when I get back. I feel like I get my sanity back. It gives me time to breathe. It gives me time to explore my world and travel and go to places like Machu Picchu that have been on my bucket list for 25 years. So that is a really critical part of my yearly pause cycle. So as I said, my partner and I have committed to doing this at least twice a year. We do a week in December. We do 2 weeks in the summer. So that's our vacation for the year. That's pause type number 1. Pause type number 2, the mini retreat. Now, I've talked about this before on the Dr. Mary TV. So the mini retreat for me is when you really need a vacation, but you can't take one because you've already used your vacation time, because life's happening and you kind of need some time off, but you can't just full out unplug and go somewhere. So the mini retreat is something that I do 4 times a year. So the key to a mini retreat for me is that, yes, part of the day, it's kind of a normal day. I'm still working, I'm still doing family stuff, I'm still doing chores, I'm still doing my day-to-day life. But I set aside a couple of hours. If you can't do 2 to 3 hours, do an hour, do 30 minutes of me time where I get to focus on self-care. So it's a mini retreat. You're at home, you still have, maybe you do a 7-hour workday, then you take your 8th hour off, right? So it takes some negotiation with your family, with your kids, whatever, with maybe even your boss. And maybe you work your full day and then you consciously set aside an evening. Maybe, and if you can do it for a week, right? An evening every day for a week where you just have a couple of hours that are you time. Again, it can be deeply restorative. Maybe you go get a massage. Maybe you do spa weekend. Maybe you journal. Maybe you paint. But you're doing something you enjoy doing. So that's pause type number 2. And I do consciously do that 4 times a year when the seasons change. So I do it at the spring equinox, I do it at summer solstice, I do it at the fall equinox, and I do it at winter solstice. That's what I've worked out over the past few years works for me. It's a time when I usually do a lot of journaling, a lot of meditating, a lot of reflecting on what's transpired in the previous cycle, what I want to bring forward in the next cycle. So it makes sense to me to do it seasonally. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, fine. So that's type number 2. Pause type number 3. This is what I call the active pause. And these are things I try to do every single day. So the active pause means you're still not doing maybe your normal work-ish kind of stuff, your chores, your family responsibilities, your work. You're doing something you enjoy that is an activity that helps get your mind off of things. For me, this is my morning yoga practice. So I used to be the person who would phone by the bedside, be checking email at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning before I even got out of bed. And what I found is that if I started my day that way, my entire day I would be anxious, frustrated, in to-do list mode, feeling like I could never get it all done. But I discovered that if I would just leave my phone in the other room and I would start my day consciously doing an activity that I enjoy that helps calm me down. For me, that's yoga. For some people, it might be painting. I have a friend who goes outside in her backyard and just drinks her cup of coffee for 20 minutes. And that's her morning power time. So I have a morning power hour, I have an evening power hour. It may not be a full hour, but the idea is that you're doing an activity that helps calm you down, refocus, ground, center, balance. So that's the 3rd type of pause that I do, and it's something that I do every day. The 4th type of pause I do is what I call the reflective pause. I'm a big journaler. I've talked about journaling a lot on the YouTube channel. If you're a journaler, awesome. If you like to creatively express in another way, to get your emotions out, get your ideas out, if you paint, if you draw, if you sing, if you dance, if you have another form of creative expression, you write poetry, do that, right? But for me, journaling, I have a series of reflection prompts that I use. They fluctuate, they change, always adding and subtracting. I usually reevaluate those seasonally when I do my seasonal pauses. But reflection is a big part of my self-care, and it's a big part of my pause practice. So after I do my morning yoga, I sit for 10 to 15 minutes and I journal. And again, I have some reflection prompts that I follow. And in the morning, it's more about, what do I want to create today? What are my focuses for the day? What are my priorities for the day? What's my self-care for today? I do it again in the evening. That doesn't take as much time, maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and it's kind of a reflection on the day. And in my evening practice, I go back. Did I get what I wanted to get done today? Not with an idea of like criticizing myself or judging myself if I didn't, but just maybe I put too much on that agenda for today and I need to cut that back a little bit for tomorrow to be more realistic. But what I make sure that I do every evening is I write down at least 5 things that I got done that day. Big, small, doesn't matter. That's my way of celebrating, patting myself on the back in this pause moment to say, good job, you did it. Some days, those are really big tasks. I got this project done. I turned in an assignment at work, like the really kind of big to-dos. Some days it's like, I got up, did some gardening, I took a shower, I watched some TV, right? I think 5 things. Depending on the day, those are going to vary. There's no judgment, there's no good or bad. It's just me patting myself on the back for getting stuff done. The second piece of that, and I do this morning and evening, gratitude. I write down at least 10 things that I'm grateful for every morning and again every evening. That's part of my reflective pause practice. Helps me come back, ground, center, focus on what I'm grateful for, on my accomplishments, instead of getting into do list mode of what I should be doing. So I've gotten better at those first 4 pause practices. I look forward to my vacations. I can't wait to plan my next one. Love my mini retreats. They're a valuable part of my business and personal life. They make me more productive, more centered. I love my morning and evening power hours, which are a combination of both the pause activity and that pause reflective piece. The last piece, in all transparency, is the one I still struggle with and the one I probably need to work most on. And that's the pause of just being, doing nothing, just sitting and breathing and watching life pass you by, watching the birds, watching the butterflies, closing your eyes and listening to the breeze as it moves through the tree leaves. That's one I struggle with. So my practice for the next 30 days, I'm doing an experiment because I was just started reading a book called Pause by Rachel O'Meara. I heard her interviewed on a podcast a few weeks ago. She was on Christina Reilo's Feminine Power Time, I believe is what it's called, podcast. Christine's great. She's a self-love guru. If you've never heard of her, check her out. Anyway, she was interviewing Rachel about her new book called Pause. And they were talking about that they were talking about all similar pause practices to what I do, a little bit different. But they were talking about the critical piece of that last pause practice, which is really to just stop and breathe. And that's what I struggle with. So my experiment for myself for the next 30 days, and I'd love it if you join me, is I'm going to institute a daily pause being practice. 15 minutes a day of just sitting and being. Is my inner critic probably going to get activated because I'm not doing something? Yeah. Am I going to feel like I should be doing something? Probably. But I'm guessing the benefits of that pause practice are going to be a mind-calming quiet that I haven't been able to achieve necessarily in my other types of pause practices. So, if that serves you, no matter when you're watching this video, I invite you to join me. 30 days, pause, Maybe 15 minutes seems overwhelming. Start with 5, start with 3. But commit to yourself to just sit and be and let life pass you by for a small bit of time every day. I've read the research. I know the benefits of this, but it's one that I still struggle with. So I'm coming out publicly to say I'm doing this for the next 30 days. I hope that you'll join me at this, whatever time you may be watching this video, even if it's a year from now. Hopefully I'm still doing my daily pause practice. So that's really it. So I'm going to add, and I've struggled with this, right? I added and then it falls off, and I added and then it falls off. So I've got a calendar ready. I'm going to cross it out. 30 days, 15 minutes. That's too much for you? Make it less. That's not enough. Make it more. Just simply being. And I'm going to see what happens. I'm guessing based on the research, I'm going to get a lot calmer and a lot more clarity. So we'll see. That's my answer to how to pause from the busyness of everyday life. 5 options. Pick the one that works for you. Try them all out. See what you like. I'll be back next week. Much love.